with that, Chad, welcome to our monthly podcast. Excited to have you here. I'm going to stop the share of my screen. I got to know you well, and I think within the King County community specifically, you have some legendary properties that people have known for decades, but not every corner of the state is familiar with Fire and Vine. Can you give us a little bit of the elevator speech about what Fire and Vine is, who your companies are, and other stuff that would help our listeners understand what kind of business you run and bring to the table?
I appreciate it. Yeah, Fire and Vine Hospitality is a family-owned business in the Pacific Northwest. We're in Washington, Oregon, and started back in '96 with my dad bringing back the El Gaucho in downtown Seattle. And we've grown that to a Gaucho in Portland, Tacoma, Bellevue, Seattle, that we're actually reopening here at the end of October in our new space. We also have Aqua by El Gaucho on Pier 70, Heirloom, and then we manage the Heritage Resort over in Walla Walla, as well as partner on the marketing and loyalty program for Walla Walla Steak Company and Crossbuck Brewery. So we're a Pacific Northwest hospitality-based company, and we've got more things to come. We got a big project on the Vancouver, Washington waterfront, partnered with the Hotel Indigo to open an El Gaucho there and a rooftop lounge. So we were about 485 and strong, and now we're about 185. So hoping to continue to grow and get back to that bigger number, bringing people back. So hopefully that gives you a little background.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of our operators, I think you're most known for that El Gaucho and Aqua, those properties and all that they bring. What has it been like to get into the lodging side of the industry? And, after years of worried about the three buckets of labor, operating, and food, having other acronyms and things being thrown in, and also managing the lodging side.
Yeah, we got into the lodging side actually at El Gaucho, Seattle. We had, I think it's been about 14 years ago, we had an opportunity to take the space above us, and we added 17 rooms of lodging for the El Gaucho customer. For us, it was an additive to create a wonderful downtown experience. And I mean, I love my lodging operators. I've got lots of great friends, but we start with profitable restaurants. And so when we added rooms, it just added to the profitability versus seeing restaurants as kind of a break-even piece. So we've really taken that and gone forward and said, hey, if we can help lodging operators by creating profitable F&B operations, that's a way for us to expand. And ultimately, over time, you'll see us managing more lodging operations as well, and maybe owning a couple additional ones coming up. So we're ambitious. Even in the middle of COVID, you got to think about future and think about the opportunities that will exist while we face the stark reality of the crisis we're in.
Well, and as you listed all your properties, you're obviously in more areas than Seattle, even though you might be known for Seattle the most. But it's fair to kind of say you have a second home now in Walla Walla. In your properties there, and they have a great reputation. What's it like it's got to be two completely different cultures. What's it like to have the Seattle and Portland cultures with one property, and now having such a great presence in Walla Walla? Has that culture change been a challenge? Is it just the same, just hospitality?
It's just hospitality. I mean, my dad retired over to Walla Walla 8 years ago, which is why we actually are now helping manage those properties and work with our partner, Dan Thiessen, on Walla Walla Steak Company and Crossbuck. To me, I've known Walla Walla for years. We've had great relationships with almost every one of the major winemakers there. They're friends. I'm married to my wife, who's from Wenatchee, Washington. I love rural. I love farming. I love the open space and outdoors. I just happen to be stuck in a city. So to me, Walla Walla is just a fantastic destination, both for wine lovers as well as people that just want to get out and enjoy. I think one thing when people were asking us about Walla Walla, and when we were concerned that there was not a lot of experienced hospitality people there. And I said, the thing you start with in Eastern Washington is you start with nice, right? And that's what I found in rural market. You start with nice, and we'll teach them skills, the other skills, but you can't buy nice, right? You gotta have to be raised with it. And so I love our wall properties and the ability to expand beyond just the urban environments.
Yeah, I was talking to an operator. I don't think this is true everywhere, but I was having a unique conversation with an operator back in the good times in October, November, when the hiring crisis was absolutely on. And they were taking training time to teach eye contact and smile and greeting guests. That was in an urban environment, it was more of an active training, and probably takes away some of that burden in more rural communities. So people already know the guests coming in; they're glad to see them.
Yep.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about you as chair. You have. I can't. I hope we never have a more dichotic time in our history of going from 2.5% unemployment, growing times, booming competitive industry. Hard to imagine a higher mark, even though the competitive nature was getting fierce. The gross dollars of the industry was an all-time high. Openings were happening, and then this I don't think we have records on industry sales from the 20s, but my guess is it would show similar. Walk us through the highlights and the positives of your chairmanship and what's it like to be in chair, and then we'll talk about some of the challenges. What have you liked being chair? What have been some of your highlights as chair?
I mean, the highlights as chair. I mean, I think, for the most part, the reality is we need to have an association that's strong, that has a voice for all operators. And not everybody can participate and, get in to participate in the board meetings or government affairs, but we have to be a voice for everybody. And what I love is that we've built a board and you've built a team that gives a voice to all. And, we started as single operators. I mean, we owned little burger joints when I was growing up as a kid. I know what it's like to not have any time to be able to think a little bit further out and think about some of the governmental policies. And what my family has always proposed is that if you're gonna complain or talk about things, you got to jump in to make a difference. And I think that being part of the hospitality board and then as chair is, how do we bring voice and make a difference for those that are so busy and so wrapped up that that we have that opportunity to have impact. And it's not my voice, it's our voice. It's not my issues, it's our issues. And as chair, I think that we get an opportunity to reiterate that and remind board members that we are here for all of us, not just our own operations.
15, 20 years from now, when you're sitting on a chair with grandkids on your lap and you're recalling your high points of being chairman of the association, what do you think you'll look back and say, these are the high points, the positive memories of being chairman and the things we've accomplished under your leadership?
Well, it's not just my leadership, it's the entire board's leadership and the executive team. I think if we go back 10, 15 years, I think our association was really seen as a very conservative association that was an association that said no a lot, and that we blocked a lot of things from happening. And I think if I look back and kind of think about the opportunities and what we did, I think one of the pieces, and I can't remember, it wasn't when I was chair, but it was part of the board, was the ability to move forward on a paid family leave for the state. And then we were the first business association to come out and not say no, but said, how can we craft a solution that works for all of us? That we thought that was important. And I think that we've been taken more seriously in Olympia and on the Hill because we haven't just thrown up a no way attitude and really trying to work on real solutions that are impacting pieces. I think the other The other side is we have kind of battled through some of the minimum wage. Is I do think that the Tacoma minimum wage, where it was kind of the $12 versus the 15, in that we were able to stop that 15 from having success there, really slowed down the state level $15 an hour. And I think that, in the long run, that is going to be a win. I think the low points are the fact that we've got a what I would call a terrible comorbidity problem in Seattle, which is we continue to have an excessive acceleration of minimum wage and non-tip credit for the city, that they just announced yesterday an additional $1.50 hike for small employers that will start January 2021. And to me, that is it's going to impact our industry for a long time and haunt us as we go forward.
Seattle has certainly been our challenge, my friend, as we've been trying to find workable solutions in the particular city. There's no doubt about it. So we're cruising along, and the industry's at highs, and COVID hits. And all of a sudden, all the 3-year plans are out the window, and we're going with 3-week plans. Let's start with your own business, and then let's work with the association. What's it been like to lead a hospitality business for you during COVID?
I mean, as you can imagine, it was brutal. It has been really tough, and our teams. We did a layoff early in March, I think March 6th. We thought, okay, if we trim down, we can kind of get through this. I was treating it like maybe a Lehman Brothers collapse or recession collapse. And my team confronted me the next week and said, Chad, we're not going to make it. Like, sales are dropping off. We have to close. And on March 12th, we did a Zoom call with all of our employees to announce that we were going to be closing that Saturday. It was the toughest call I've ever, toughest thing I've done in my whole life, to basically tell 485 people that their livelihood was coming to an end and that I had no idea what would happen afterwards. The only condolences I could give, or consolation, was that we did cover the healthcare through April 100%. The employee and employer coverage, because that was the biggest question, is going into a pandemic, am I going to have health care? That was a dark time, and I think it was a dark time for everybody. But out of that, started to think about, well, we're going to emerge one day, right? Like, you have to have hope, and that the Stockdale paradox of facing this bleak outlook while also maintaining optimism that will come through that really became what we focused on. And so we looked at versus hibernating, we looked at it as a dry dock opportunity. We replaced all of our systems. We only had 21 people on payroll, on halftime payroll. So it was easy to kind of train everybody again, and started to rethink, how could we repiece this business together? If we're going to be at substantially reduced volume levels, we were planning to relaunch with Tuesday to Saturday, dinner only. We sloughed off those meal periods that were just brutal on us anyways, and engaged with landlords, employees, and just kept going until we were able to relaunch our businesses. And by the time we reopened Portland, we had been shut down 100 days. And I mean, just really tough. But at the same time, we had incredible people who were rooting for us to make it through. And we went through what everybody else did, right? We ran to the EIDL loans. They were shut down. We ran to PPP funding. The first round shut down, right? We didn't get any of that. We came in on the second round. We've been really judicious about spending that money and doing it in a way that would give us longevity. And I think one of the good outcomes out of all this is just the amount of discussions that have happened between operators of, how are you doing? What are you thinking about? What are you, how are you dealing with landlords? Who's being problematic? Who's being, who's working with you? And really, I think in some ways has helped some of the operators come together even more. I wish it didn't take a pandemic for us to reinvent our business, but I think that the reality is our businesses are going to be different going forward.
Well, let's pick up on that piece right there, Chad. The reinventing our businesses. I think it is a key. I think some of the change we've been resisting for the better part of a decade, because times were good enough that we could resist. I think change is here. What are the key areas that either you have focused on or you encourage the industry as the chair to focus on, because we need to change? And what are those areas that you would encourage people to look at?
I mean, ultimately we have I think there's two areas that we've got to reinvent or rethink how we do it. And that's the ever increasing minimum wage and the tipped employee circumstance. And in that you have to rethink how this business gets structured and redone. And, we're a service charge model. We pay commissions. We've totally upended the industry and did something completely different. And I think as people start to come back, they're going to have to figure out how we rebuild in an environment where that if you're paying tipped wages, that wage now is becoming super high in parts of our states or depending on your operations. So for Seattle, I think that the reality is the Seattle marketplace is not going to recover because of the comorbidity of all the regulatory rules that we have here. And I mean, I just was looking at a project over in Kirkland, and 4 of the restaurateurs that I know all signed on that project. They were all Seattle restaurateurs only, and they're leaving the city. And I think that at some point there needs to be a wake up call for a couple of these urban environments to realize that they're about to lose some of their best assets that they've had for so long. I think we're going to have to deal with the fact on the full service side that if you are in a high cost area, that our traditional lunch is in peril. And I don't see how lunch within this next year without a complete reversal of travel and office ever stages a comeback. And which is hard to say. And the reality is what happens if there's not a place to go or many places to go downtown for lunch. But the good news is for us and for a lot is, for us, the bulk of our revenue comes from outside the city of Seattle. So we have more revenue in the rest of Washington State than we do here. And so I think you're going to continue to see us build on that. I think you'll hear some announcements on Woodinville that we're just very bullish on the overall market. It's just some of the regulatory places you may find that the recovery takes a lot longer to occur.
We mentioned a couple times within that conversation and the question before about the Stockdale paradox. For our listeners who aren't familiar with the book Good to Great and the conversation of that paragraph, one, it's Good to Great is one of my top 4 leadership books of all time. Can you talk a little bit of what the Stockdale paradox means to you?
Yeah, and then when we're sitting there in April and May without any hope of reopening, it to me it's the ability to hold two truths together. And one is we are facing something that's impending doom, right? And it's stark and it's real, which is we could lose our entire business. I could lose all of our locations. We could be bankrupt. My house gone, right? All of our employees' houses gone. Just you're facing that stark reality that the business as we know it just came to an end, and we have no idea when it will return. And being able to say, how do we deal with that? While at the same time going, there is a future, and having this unresolved or unwavering commitment to a future that we will prevail and get through this. I don't know how, but we will, and we will hold that truth in place as well. And so it's living with that stark reality that is today, while also having this optimism, this realistic optimism that you need, that entrepreneurs need to get through. Because if you just lived in the stark reality, you curl up in a ball. If you just live with this optimism, you ignore the reality that you have today. And so that for us, it was about cash management. It was about do not run out of money. How do we do this? Don't pay people. I mean, it's, vendors, all those things getting in negotiations. So for me, that's what Stockdale does is it gives you a realistic look at where you're at with that hope of and optimism that you will triumph and prevail.
I don't think I could explain it any better, Chad. I think you nailed that. And I do think it's an important reality we all have to deal with. And choosing your attitude, right? The work is in front of you. Your team is looking to you for leadership. Your community, your vendors, the people you pay bills to are looking to see what your attitude is. And it's that fine line. I think you described it perfectly. Moving on to a couple of other questions I'd love to ask you about. For a lot of our operators who maybe are getting into politics for the first time, what makes us successful in hospitality and who we are doesn't always translate to how you deal with politics. And you and I had some conversations when you first getting involved in the association. Other people have struggled during COVID of what's the governor thinking, or what's this person thinking, and why don't they just do this, or don't they understand the minimum wage kills X? As you'll always be with us, I hope on our board and in other leadership roles, but as you're going out as chair to the next generation of leaders, how have you found the need to talk to our state officials and lead different than the ability that you develop in hospitality to deal with employees, leadership, hard decisions, small margins? How do those difference, and how can you help the next generation of leaders understand that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the toughest part is as an entrepreneur, as somebody running your business, you get to speak truth and get to things a little quicker. But the reality is when you're dealing with the political world, you can't rant and rave, right? They will turn you off and just ignore you versus trying to come in with some data and facts and figuring out a way to approach people who you disagree with. And I think that even as we've gone through COVID, Anthony, there's been times I'm ranting and raving internally or to my team, and my PR director, Beth, she goes, "Oh, it must be Thursday," because I'm on my soapbox, like, going through like, "Dad, we need to do this and this and this." And then I calm down, and then I realize we have to be able to engage at a civil level and to move stuff forward. That screaming, yelling, complaining does not get us there, even though sometimes that's what we'd really love to do. And I think that is the hardest part, where you can't just be yourself. You do have to help temper that a little bit, because ultimately you want to share your stories, and you want to share other people's stories to get people to open up and at least listen to you. And attacking always shuts down conversations. This is on both sides, so doesn't matter the political parties. It's how do you collaborate and work together with people that you might have formerly been opposed to. And I'll just do a side note. We've been working on a project called Third Door Coalition around chronic homelessness, and part of the whole assumption on that and our go forward strategy was to set aside our differences and work on one common goal. And I think as an association, we've done a good job of doing that, where we can battle on one thing, but on another item, we can actually just work together with the same people we just battled on another issue. And, as much as I want to rant and rave sometimes, we have to have cool heads. We can be emotional, but we also need to be respectful to move stuff forward.
I think that's a great, actually, Lisa, I want to record that and play it for a lot of people who are getting involved in the industry, because it is such a dichotomy of my dad and my uncle in our restaurants growing up. You got through a lot of problems by being fierce, and hospitality teaches you, if you want to get it done, be aggressive and be fierce. And it's a counterintuitive thing when you're approaching community solutions sometimes. So I think that was really well said. Chad, if 5 years from now you're watching my podcast of the next chairperson who's going out, what would you hope that the association would accomplish in your wake in the next 2 to 5 years? What would you hope would be the next thing that you hope the association would tout as a win for the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but on the podcast, but I think there's two areas that we could really change the trajectory of both legislation and our employees' lives. And one is around portable benefits packages and untethering healthcare benefits and all those benefits from just a single employer to people who are working multiple jobs. Why can't we do something different as a state related to that? So to me, there's great opportunity within that. It can be around association health plans that allow employees to choose the different things that they want to put together, but employers contributing to their account for that. The other is how do we activate and harness and really get our teams involved in understanding the industry, being a voice for that industry and working together. I'll say it a lot to some of the politicians that said, it's really interesting. There's everybody here except the employees are not represented. There might be a union representative and some others, but our actual employees, you're missing their voice as well. And I think that there's something there for the association to help to bring light and voice to that. So I think those would be the two big ones that I think are really future and forward looking, that could have a great impact on our industry. We have an incredible industry, and I think sometimes our voices are not heard as loud as they should be, and that there are opportunities and solutions around benefits that could be totally different than what we're doing right now as a state. And I'd love to see that innovation occur.
I 100% agree with both those points. I think I'd love for everyone who's around the state or even operators who are new to Seattle to see what a difference the Full Service Worker Alliance made during the paid sick leave conversation.
Yeah.
And there was only I think it's about 4 to 8 of them who truly led, and they built a heck of a coalition. They changed the directory of that conversation by being involved and giving voice to it. And how do we support that? I think is a great question in front of us. We're coming to the end of our time here. And is there anything else, Chad, that you want to pass on in your time as chair, your direction to me, or for our listeners out there that to carry forward during these times or beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I would leave with is you've got an incredible team that has moved so much over the years, but during this COVID and shutdowns and the restrictions and to leave the general industry to understand there was so much that has occurred behind the scenes that'll never be public, that this team has done an incredible job of keeping us from being shut down in August. I mean, there was a point at which we were going to be shut down again, to continuing negotiations with the government, a lot of stuff that will not end up being on the public side that you deserve a ton of credit for. And unfortunately you won't get other than from the people that know, how incredible a job that the association has done on behalf of everybody. And I know that people are disappointed in all sorts of the changes, and that we got, that we wanted more, but the reality is you keep moving the chains down the field. And to me, that's how we're going to get out of this and continue to win without, being realistic and just keeping forward. So, again, keeping the voice of all the operators, keeping the voice of the entire industry, which is what the association has done, and being an advocate for everyone. So,
well said, Chad. I think we'll end with any other questions Lisa, are there any questions in the chat room for Chad or myself?
Yes.
And then we'll wrap it up after that.
Yeah. We have a question from a hotelier who wants to do an art auction in November. With the restriction changes, her understanding is that even though the auction itself is seated, the looking at art prior to the event is considered networking and social. The customer advised that even though they're classified as a retail sales event, even though they can accommodate all the social distancing guidelines and safety measures for both guests and their team, auctions or retail sales events are not allowed. Is that correct?
I'll tell you what, this is a very specific question, and I think there are answers on how to do these things safely.
Yep.
But I think they'd be very specific. So, Ann, if you get a chance to email me or email Lisa, Lisa, if you can help me facilitate the capture of her email.
Absolutely.
Let's see what we can do to help work with
Yep.
her customer to see if there's a solution bridge there. There may not be, but my instinct is there. I think there's enough in the rules for creativity to at least have a good conversation.
I would agree.
And those are the questions we had.
Okay, I'm just going to end with we can make a difference in this thing. We're seeing operators around the state rallying to wear masks and support their community. From Save 509 in Spokane to the efforts going on in Clark County and otherwise, please wear a mask. Please encourage your team members to wear a mask and help us help you. So hopefully we can have another good conversation next month. Be safe, everyone, and just know we'll keep working hard for you every day.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you to the
Chad.
team.